Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. This is the second episode of my question and answer series on Star Wars Destiny. A few more people wrote in with questions and we're going to get right into those questions. So our first question comes from K-Man and he asks, so for the next episode I have a question about how do you feel about the fast Spirit of Rebellion meta? How can you take so many more additional actions that the game can go so fast? I'm not a huge fan because sometimes I feel like I'm just watching the game and not playing it. How do you feel about this? So first of all, I want to thank K-Man for his question. Um, I feel that the speed right now is probably as fast as Fantasy Flight probably wants to make it. I don't know if we're going to have some cards getting erratas later on, potentially Ray, because Ray, if you play a card with Ambush on Ray, you get 2 additional actions. You can then overwrite that to get more actions. Play for speed and roll it, resolve it, get even more actions. So I wouldn't be surprised in the future if we see an errata on Ray that maybe says something like the first or whenever you play a non-ambush upgrade on this character, you get the additional action instead of having the action stick from or stack, I should say, from her ability and then ambush and things like that. So let me just bring up some cards here. So we have fast hands. That makes the game a little bit faster because instead of just rolling and waiting to resolve something, a player can just roll and immediately resolve. We also have force speed, which I think the problem is more with force speed than fast hands because fast hands is just roll a die in and resolve one, or a character in and resolve one of those dice. Force speed, I think, feels a little bit broken, especially if you do it with Ray, where you play an ambush upgrade on her, get those additional actions, play another ambush upgrade, play fast hands, roll her, resolve force speed for 2 more actions. However, the game being that fast also means that they're not really going to get to react to a lot of stuff that you're doing. So if they just roll a bunch of dice out, do a bunch of actions, and claim the battlefield, that leaves you open to just play out all of your turns without any kind of interruption. So they can't, if they roll everything out and claim, they're not going to be able to electroshock your dice or use other stuff to remove them, things like that. So the speed does come kind of at a penalty because if you play so fast, you're probably going to either be claiming or passing a lot of your future actions because you've claimed the battlefield and you can't do anything else. I wouldn't be surprised if, like again, I said, if Ray maybe gets an errata because I think the speed is really bad with her. It's where it's kind of like the biggest problem because she has that ability that states whenever you play an upgrade on her, you get another action. So if it's ambush, it's 2 actions. You overwrite basically like I see people holdout blaster, overwrite with another holdout blaster. So it's first up play holdout blaster. That's 2 actions. Um, Play another holdout blaster. So there's 1 action, but then 2 more actions. Play force speed, roll force speed, resolve. 2 more actions off of force speed if it happens to roll special. So that does feel a little bit broken. I don't really play blue a lot, but I am building a Ray Qui-Gon deck. I do have 2 force speeds. I just want to see how it plays. But I'm more of a fan of red and yellow. But I hope that Fantasy Flight, at least in the next set in Empire at War, kind of doesn't slow the game down, but also doesn't do anything to make it go incredibly fast. So also with characters like Palpatine, where it's just one character, if they're playing him at Elite, that's going to feel fast as well because Palpatine can roll. It goes to you. You roll your character. Palpatine resolves, like let's say all of his dice. Let's say he rolled 2 of his sides were damage and an upgrade was range damage as well. He can resolve that all at once, and then you still have another character to roll. So I think cards like Fast Hands in particular were put in to kind of give some characters a chance to actually do something against characters like Palpatine, which can roll in next turn, resolve a bunch of damage. Then he also triggers his ability. If you resolve his die, it will do 2 more damage spread out however your opponent wants. So I think something like Fast Hands is actually a good thing, but I do feel Force Speed, since it's not just one die, it's additional turns. But also, there's been times where I see people play Force Speed, and it was like they had Force Speed on Rey, and they got the two. They resolved the special, two additional actions, and then they rolled a character, and it was like Rey Obi-Wan, and first extra action was to roll Obi-Wan, second action was to focus, and then that was it. So you're not always going to be able to resolve stuff off of Force Speed. So with Force Speed, they rolled Obi-Wan, didn't get any melee damage, and then focused the other Obi-Wan die into melee damage, which then I think the other player was able to electroshock or remove somehow. But as for right now, I think it's probably fine currently. At least Rey, when you're playing against Rey, usually she's the first one to go down. So and luckily Force Speed doesn't have something like redeployed or anything like that. That would just be insane. But currently, I think we're kind of at like a cap of like how fast the game could get. I hope in Empire at War there's no more insane cards like Force Speed. But I really don't have a problem with Force Speed. There's a lot of times whenever I played against it, it's rolled everything except the specials. I played against somebody playing, I think it was Rey Obi-Wan at a local event, and I think they rolled either Focus or Shields most of the time. I don't even remember if they even got off the special once. But that's going to do it for that question. We're going to move right into our next question. I again want to thank K-Man for writing in, and we'll be right back with our next question. And our next question comes in from Jeff, and he writes in and says, "What are your thoughts about Vader Raider? Should Civ Holocron remain in the build for abilities, or should I focus on a more weapons-based aggro deck?" It kind of depends on what you want to do with the deck. Do you want to include any abilities? Do you want to include maybe Mind Probe, Force Throw, or maybe Force Lightning? If you want to include any of those kind of cards, I would definitely say keep the Holocron in. Also, so let's take a look at the Holocron here. It's 0, so you can play it for free. It does have Focus, it has a +1 resource, and 2 specials. So this is a good way to get those abilities into play. And also, like, you can remember, if you are playing yellow, so Vader Raider, you have access to bait and switch. So you can actually roll Holocron out onto its +1 resource, use it, bait and switch, and go to the special, resolve the special, play your Force Throw or Mind Probe or whatever it is, and if you have a resource, you can roll it in. If you then land on the special on Force Throw, you can do a little bit more damage to your opponent, depending on what dice you and your opponent have out, because you can throw your own dice as well at them. So I think Civ Holocron is just really good. I know there's no real like melee abilities. Like a lot of the damage coming from like Mind Probe is, I think it's 3 range damage for a resource, but it also has access to a little bit more control. And the special on Mind Probe, especially if they have a full hand or close to a full hand, is still pretty good. So if they have 4 cards in their hand, let's say you bait and switch, change the +1 resource to a special, you remove Holocron, bounce it to your hand, play Mind Probe, roll it in. If you roll the special, that's 4 damage right there. So I think you definitely want to probably focus on melee with like vibro knives and lightsabers and things like that. Maybe Gaffy sticks if you're running Vader Raider, fast hands as well. But I think Holocron is still a good card to include in that deck, just so you can get some of those abilities out, especially Force Throw, because it's a very good control die, control card. So if you get the special out, can throw their 3 range damage back at them, doing 3 damage. So it's a good way to control their dice and do damage if you have Force Throw. So I would say probably I would recommend keeping Holocron in if you wanted to do that. If you just want to have maybe Force Throw or just one of the upgrades, maybe Holocron could be replaced with something else. But if you want to run, I think like Force Throw and Mind Probe, and maybe another upgrade or an ability, I should say. I would keep it in actually. Also, you can also use the special on this to get out Force Illusion, provided you're not playing against melee damage or vibro knives, because melee damage from the vibro knife, you can't discard Force Illusion to actually block that damage. So even if you have, let's say you have your Mind Probe and your Force Throw out, you have another Holocron on Vader, roll the special, you can actually switch it out with Force Illusion as well because it's another ability. So I say keep keep the holocron in the deck. At least one. I would recommend a playset. But if you are trying to focus just on melee damage and you don't want to use any abilities, then I would remove holocron. Even though it does have the focus, so you can focus Vader into his 3 damage side or something like that. But if you're not using abilities, it's probably not going to be useful. So just analyze your deck, see what you're trying to do with it. Are you leaning more toward melee damage? If you are and not using any abilities, get rid of the holocron. If you're using abilities, I would say keep it. So that's going to do it for this question. We're going to move into our next question. I want to thank Jeff again for writing in, and we will be right back with the next question. And our next question comes from Facebook, and they wrote in and said, I have the Royal Guard that says cannot play blue abilities. I also have Civ Holocron that says I can switch an ability and place it on a character, ignoring the ability's restrictions. Does this mean I can put a blue ability on the Royal Guard? And the simple answer to that is yes. Um, what the what they call a play restriction means that you cannot just pay the 3 resources. Let's say you're doing a force throw. I can't pay 3 resources and put a force throw on the Royal Guard because you are paying the resource cost and playing that card onto the Royal Guard. However, cards like Sith Holocron and the Cargo Hold get around this. So it takes a little bit more setup to get these abilities onto these characters because you can't just straight up pay the resources and drop the card onto that character. So Sith Holocron, you play it on the Royal Guard. When you go to roll the Royal Guard, you roll both the Royal Guard and the Holocron. Goes back to you. You resolve the special. You return the Holocron card to your hand. You set the die aside, and you take a blue ability in your hand and then put it on the Royal Guard. You aren't actually playing that card, so it gets around the restriction of not being able to play blue abilities on that character. Also, the Cargo Hold Battlefield does something similar. So let's say I have Palpatine and Royal Guard, one of each, or we're not running them at Elite. And let's say I play Force Throw on Palpatine. So pay 3 resources, play Force Throw on Palpatine, and in a future turn in that round, I claim the battlefield. I can then slide Force Throw from Palpatine to the Royal Guard. That is not you are not playing the card, you are just switching it between characters. With Holocron, you are not actually playing it, you're just switching the card that was already out, which is the Holocron, with a card from your hand. So you actually aren't playing it. So that is a way to get around these restrictions on certain characters. It's a way people are using training, they're using training to make Palpatine elite. So you could have like a Palpatine and TIE Pilot deck, running them at normal values, just one of each. You play training under TIE Pilot, making it elite. Claim the Cargo Hold, moving training onto Palpatine, because training says it's for non-unique red characters only, but that's a play restriction. So when you do that to Palpatine, you are just sliding it from the pilot to Palpatine, making Palpatine elite. So there are ways to get around these restrictions. They just take a little bit of setup because you can't just play the card on it right away. You need to either, holocron it or holocron it, cargo hold it, or things like that. But the basics of the question was, can you put these abilities on these characters through use of the holocron? And the answer is yes. So I want to thank them for writing in. We'll be right back with our next question. And our final question for this episode comes from Jake. It says, how can I make a deck with Mon Mothma? I really want to use her, but I can't seem to pair her with anything viable. So here is Mon Mothma. So 9 health, 11 or 14 points, depending on if you want to run her at a single or an elite cost. The immediate person that I would pair her with would probably be Leia Organa, because Leia is 16, so you have 30 points right there. Both elite. Mon Mothma has really good focus, so a 1 focus and a 2 focus, especially in a deck that runs on a lot of range damage, like Leia has multiple damage sides, so you can use her focus to focus Leia into damage. She also has this cool ability, after you play an event, you may re-roll a die of the same color as that event. So if you're just going straight red, maybe a few grays in there and stuff like that, you could keep Leia out longer because Leia has this ability that lets you remove one of her dice to re-roll up to 2 other dice. But also, it's a trade-off because you're removing one of Leia's dice. If it's a blank, it probably doesn't really matter. But let's say you roll Leia and it was range damage in the blank, and you play another, like we play a red event. Let's say you play Rebel Assault or something like that. You then get to re-roll that Leia die. So Leia's a very good match or pairing for Mon Mothma. So you have Mon Mothma at 14, Leia at 16. I think Chewbacca would also be a really good pairing for Mon Mothma because you can run them both at elite. Her focus can focus Chewbacca into his damage sides or his special. You can throw life debt on Chewbacca, so whenever you activate him, you can heal damage from Mon Mothma and so on. Snap is another good character you can throw of her. I've also seen people run Mon Mothma and hired guns. So hired guns require resources for their damage. Mon Mothma has 2 resource sides. The hired guns also have 2 resource sides. You can then also use one Mon Mothma die, let's say, to get a resource. Use the other one to focus both using the focus 2, focus both the hired guns and the damage. If you have enough resources, you can do quite a bit of damage with her and some hired guns. So like I said, I think Leia is one of the best options to pair her with currently. I would probably wait for the Awakening reprint to come out sometime later this month. Try to pick up maybe 2 Princess Leia cards and dice, and build a Mon Mothma Leia. I think I was running Leia Akbar during Awakening, and it was a very good deck. Pretty good. Like, you have a focus side on Akbar, he has range damage. Mon Mothma doesn't have any damage sides of her own on her own die. You can, throw a gun card on her or something like that. But I think she has this really cool ability to re-roll stuff, and then her 2 focus sides and her 2 resource sides can come in handy to, or pay for the hired guns damage sides, or just get some big upgrades in later in the game. So Leia will be my pick, and then also hired guns. But you're going to have to probably wait until the Awakenings reprint comes out, or just check out places that are selling singles for Leia. But that would be my pick. I have finally got my second copy of Mon Mothma, so I want to build a deck with her and Leia, maybe her and Snap, but it's going to be a lot better with, I think, Leia, just because she has multiple damage sides that are all the same. Like Chewbacca is mixed damage; he has ranged and melee damage sides, but he also has 12 health. So if you can keep Mon Mothma healed and just use her to focus Chewbacca into massive amounts of damage, even if focus into a special, use that special to turn one of your opponent's dice to a modified side. Especially if they don't have any unmodified sides out, deal that damage, and then they're left with a modifier. So Mon Mothma, she's squishy. She only has 9 health, but if you keep her healed, she could definitely help pump out some damage with Chewbacca or Leia. So that's going to do it for this episode of the question and answer series. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll leave a link in the description, to where you can submit your own questions. You can also just submit them in the comment section below. I want to thank everybody again for watching, and take care.